All right, so now we're going to talk about how to take a shot. In this case, it's going to be off of a prop. So here we're just using a tripod. That's another really nice thing about having a tripod is you can use it for practice. So we just took the ball head off the tripod and we're just going to be using the game changer bag and our rifle to set up and take a shot. So another really important thing about your rifle setup is that it balances in this type of situation. So this Savage B22 has this rotary magazine, which is really cool because it sits up in there flush. So now we have this Gray Ops Arca plate pushed back. It surrounds the magazine, and since the balance point on this rifle is right about here, we can put that on the prop and it'll sit there by itself with no hands. So that's a really important thing because when you point the rifle at the target, if the rifle is balanced and on target, it's a lot easier to break a steady shot than if the rifle were, let's say, rear heavy and you have to hold up the rear of the rifle with your shoulder. That can be done, and most rifles will be rear heavy. It just takes a lot more experience to be stable behind the rifle and supporting the rear of the rifle when it's, balanced heavy toward the rear. So what we're gonna do is there's a target out there, 85 yards. I'm actually not gonna be shooting, there's no ammo in the gun, but I'll kind of explain how to get set up and how to break a good shot. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is make sure that whatever you're using is stable. So if you're using a tripod, just make sure the tripod's set up the way you want it, nice and stable. So the next thing is you're gonna be standing there with your gear in hand. You'll have the rifle in one hand and your bag in the other. I like to hold the bag like this so that I can spread the lobes and manipulate the bag with one hand. You'll put the bag on your prop. Make sure that you do this, take your time and make sure it's nice and stable. Then you're gonna place the gun on top of that. Make sure that's nice and stable. Then you'll point the gun at the target and you get good at this over time. So you can actually take a guess and then look in the scope. I'm a little low, make an adjustment. You keep doing that and pretty soon it'll be like pointing your finger. You'll be able to put it right on target. So yeah, gun goes on target and then you put your body around the gun. Versus the other way would be to put your body in place, put the gun down, and then if you're off target, people are like moving their body. So we don't want to do that. You put the gun down on target, then you'll put your body around the gun, find the target, make any fine-tuned tweaks. Then you'll close the bolt, adjust your bubble level, put your finger on the trigger with a nice 90-degree bend. If you're an advanced shooter, you can note what the wind is doing, make any last wind guesses or calculations and hold that wind value. And then you will slowly press the trigger and watch through the scope, watch where the bullet goes and follow through and analyze the shot. Then bolt goes back and then you're done with your shot. All right, so now I'm gonna cover a topic that's commonly called free recoil. So what free recoil is by definition, the rifle is free to recoil. So theoretically, you wouldn't be touching the rifle at all. It'd be pointing at the target and you'd somehow break the trigger without manipulating the gun and the gun would just kind of do its own thing and recoil. The way that people actually kind of use free recoil is they get it pointed at the target and they're commonly, holding the gun here by the scope or up here, but their shoulder is not on the gun. So pros and cons of free recoil. The pros are if you have a stable barricade, but your body might not be perfectly stable. If you keep your body and your cheek off the gun, theoretically and usually the crosshairs are a lot more steady. So, some people stand off to the side of the gun like this. Some people do this kind of hybrid thing where they're not really touching the gun. But either way, the barricade is what's holding the gun, not your body. So the advantage is your crosshairs are a lot more steady. If you're in a compromised position or for whatever reason your body is not stable that day, you can have a lot steadier reticle with a free recoil hold. The disadvantage of free recoil is the rifle will recoil freely, so In general, we want to catch the rifle under recoil because then we can see what's going on downrange. In the right conditions, you can actually watch the bullet in flight or the trace of the bullet. Depending on the sun position that day, if the sun's to your back, you can literally see the bullet going to the target. And then you'll always want to watch to see where it hits on the target, or if it misses the target, you know, where it splashes in the dirt. So when you're not controlling recoil, the gun comes back and it's a lot harder to see the bullet action. So in general, you want to support the rear of the gun, but free recoil is a handy tool to kind of have in your toolkit for, you know, either you're shaky that day or you're in a compromised position. So I'll kind of go through what these two look like. So a free recoil position, you'll put the bag down, you'll put the gun on the bag at its balance point, hopefully, or as far forward as the gun allows. Then you'll point the gun at the target. You'll hold the gun with your left hand, either on the scope, applying pressure down into the bag, through the bag into the barricade, or you could hold the gun up here. And then the back of your body is not touching the gun, your cheek is not pushing down, and you'll break the trigger whatever way you can without disturbing the gun. So now the kosher way to do it with your shoulder on the gun would be very similar, but you're gonna come in, you're gonna support the rear of the gun with your shoulder. And you break the shot. A lot of times what'll happen is you might come in with your shoulder, realize that your reticle wobble is bigger than the target. You could take your shoulder off, you can make adjustments, see what works for you, change your leg positions, lock out your knees, maybe put more pressure on your arm or take pressure off. Just see what works for you and just get used to finding what works. Then it becomes muscle memory, and then in a match condition, you'll know what to go to get yourself out of a wobbly bind.
One of our favorite props to use for practice at home is a ladder. Most people have a ladder available at home, and it also gives you a lot of different height variations. So you can learn how to set up on a ladder first. And then if I'm at a match and I see a prop that I've never shot off of before, but it's about the same height as my rib cage, now I know how I set up because I've practiced it at home on a ladder. So there's, you know, if something's at my hip, I know that's the third rung of the ladder. At my knee is the second rung, and about halfway up my calf is the last rung of the ladder. It's also an official barricade of the NRL22, so you will see it at NRL22 matches, and it's a really effective prop to learn how to position your body relative to different prop heights. So for this one, we'll start on the top step that I am able to reach, which is the fourth one. This is too tall for me, I'm not going to be able to see through my scope. So the fourth rung, I'll set up the bag, put the rifle carefully through without hitting the scope, and then what I'm going to do is position my body around the rifle. So one of the things when you're doing this sport that you want to do is ignore all of your natural instincts when it comes to anything that you've done athletically before, where you're supposed to be in the ready position and you bend your legs. So if you do this right now, just stand up and bend your legs and start to, you know, count to 5, and you can start to feel the tremor already in your muscles. You're already going to start to feel fatigue in those muscles. So what you want to avoid in shooting is anything that's going to cause you to shake or be unstable. So what you want to do is you actually want to line up with your legs and your knees locked, and you'll bend at the waist. And that's just going to prevent you from overutilizing your muscles and introducing shake while you're shooting. So I'll put myself around the rifle, looking through the scope, and with my left hand on a ladder, sometimes I will grab the top of the scope and I can grab onto the ladder, and that gives me some extra stability. Other times, if I don't have something up top to push against, I'll actually grab the front of the bag and put my thumb along the front of the rifle on the left-hand side. So once I'm on target, I'll go ahead and close the bolt, and we're not going to live fire, we're just going to dry fire. And then slowly pull the trigger with a nice 90-degree pull and follow through. And then open up the bolt again. Now, oftentimes shoot from multiple rungs in the same stage. So you're gonna wanna come straight back out. You'll set up on the next rung, put the rifle through, and then I'm gonna do a kneeling position for this rung. So again, I know how I'm going to approach these because I've practiced on a ladder before, so I know that I'm tall enough to kneel with 2 knees down on this one. So again, I wanna make sure that I'm straight down and that the pressure is on my skeletal structure and not on my muscles. I will bend slightly at the waist, get on target, and close the bolt and pull the trigger. Now for these lower positions, everyone's a little bit different. In my case, I can squat down pretty low because I have flexible hips. I know other people who can't. So again, another reason to be practicing this at home is because you don't have to do this when you're under time pressure. You know, figuring out that you're uncomfortable sitting this way, so you're gonna have to sit on your butt, for example. So there's multiple ways to approach this and none of them are wrong. What works best for you is what feels most stable and what you're able to execute on the clock in time. So for me, I'm gonna squat on this step. And then on the last rung, I can still do a squat on this. A squat sit, I call it. So this is how I would approach this one because it enables me to get up and down faster if I'm going through multiple rungs. A lot of people don't have flexible enough joints to do this, which is fine. You can also do a sitting position. It just takes longer to get up and down. So you can sit cross if you need to, or you can do a prone position for this one. So it's slightly too tall for me. So it's more of a high prone, but that gives you some extra stability, especially if you're tall and your right elbow can meet the ground. The more contact points you have with the ground, the better off you are. So we're going to demonstrate what an actual NRL22 monthly course of fire stage looks like. This particular stage is got a start position, standing port of arms with all gear in hand. And we'll go through the different commands that you might hear at a match. So for this particular course of fire, we have a single target at 100 yards. It's 3 inches wide. And the course of fire dictates that the shooter is going to utilize the top rung that they're able to reach for their height. And they're going to shoot 1 shot at that target. Then they're going to move to the next rung down and take a single shot and move the next rung down. They're going to work their way down the ladder and back up for 10 rounds. So, does the shooter understand the course of fire?
The shooter does.
Go ahead and load and make ready.
All right.
This stage is 2 minutes long, so we've set our timer to 2 minutes. And myself as a range officer, I will be calling impacts as well as timing the shooter and making sure that he's following the procedures correctly. Is the shooter ready?
Shooter ready.
Stand by. Engage. Impact. 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 Impact.